Two things, though, did him for me, Goffey. Blaming the players so openly after the Arsenal defeat and fighting with people. He had a tussle with Klopp on the touchline. There was a to and fro with Mourinho. There was a journalist last week in a press conference. He was a little bit just too aggressive, Frank, and needed just to calm down a little bit.
He's learning on the job, though, Aid.
Yeah, well, he's had a year at Derby, and you don't get that time. I mean, what bit do you need to learn on the job to?
What, a high stressful job at Chelsea, knowing that managers do get this.
When you've done it with Klopp, Mourinho,
totally
and
different
journalists.
to Derby. You can't compare Derby to Chelsea.
Well,
it's a
a
totally
manager.
different ask.
As a manager.
He went into Derby where they're given lots of young players game time, and the job was to get into the playoffs. He got them into the playoffs, didn't quite work out. He's then got the job at Chelsea. First year at Chelsea, did a brilliant job. Got him in the Champions League.
I'm talking about fighting with people, though. I mean, I'm talking about.
But that's his
being
personality.
Aggressive. Yeah, well, that's not going to work, is it?
Klopp fights with people.
Well, he's won a Champions League and a Premier League. He'd won the league at Dortment. You've got to have something behind you first.
So you can only start fighting with people when you've won stuff?
When you can
you
back
can't
it
be
up,
yourself. Yeah. No, I'm not having that. If that's your personality and that's the way you get the best out of yourself, and you're an emotional person, yes, you have to control it in certain occasions, but you can't suddenly tell someone, wait till you've won something before you can start opening your mouth.
Well, I think people were more intrigued to see whether he'd be a successful manager rather than somebody who could have a fight with Klopp on the touchline. I think he also didn't convince anyone with tactics, selections, or in-game management. But what I will say is this. Under Abramovich, there have been 14 managers, not including caretakers, OK? Now, this includes 2 spells for Hiddink, 2 spells for Mourinho. So in order of lasting the longest, it's Mourinho's first spell, then Mourinho's second spell, then Conte, then Ancelotti, and then Lampard. He lasted longer than Ranieri, Grant, Hiddink, Scolari, AVB, Di Matteo, Rafa, Sarri. He's also the only manager sacked by Abramovich who warranted a personal statement from the Chelsea owner when he sacked him as well. Listen, I think it's not a surprise that he's got the sack at Chelsea. They're in a terrible run of form, and with the players they've got, they should be doing better. And I'm looking at it game by game, Goffey, and I cannot see where he's turning that around.
You'd like to think the players would up it. I mean, people talked about tactically, he'd not got it right defensively at the start of the season. He turned that around. They went on that great run. They got to the top of the table. But I agree. The problem he's had has been good, bad. And it's getting out of it. And if they don't feel as though they've got the confidence in him making that defence tighter and against the better clubs being able to compete, they make the change. And it's their call. Listen, Abramovich owns the football club and you can't argue with the stuff he's won. You could argue the fact that he's sacked so many managers in his time there, but they keep on winning stuff when they replace the managers. And if you look at their last few, they've all won stuff. Now, Frank's left there having not won anything, got to a final and didn't win. So I still think it's an harsh call, but it'll be interesting what happens to Frank now. I mean, I think he'll learn from his experience at Chelsea, but we'll see what happens down the line. I'm sure we'll talk about it later because it's worth talking about Frank Lampard. But when he looks back, I don't think there'll be any regrets he took that job, Ed. None whatsoever.
Well, he isn't stupid. He saw managers come and go at Chelsea when he was a player. He didn't take the job thinking he was going to last for 20 years and do a Fergie. He took the job knowing that he would not survive if things started going wrong. And guess what? Things started going wrong and he's been sacked. What you've got to bear in mind is it's not about that. It's not about, look at, how close are we? We're still in the Champions League. He's looking, it's a football thing. They're looking at how Chelsea are playing. They're looking at how Frank has responded to some of the issues at the football club. And they don't see a way forward with that. The statement makes that perfectly clear. They don't see Frank Lampard as having the ability to turn this around. Now, we'll never know if they're right or wrong, but that's their firm belief. And the amazing thing about this is there's so many fans of other clubs who are looking at Chelsea or hating Frank Lampard and they're all delighted he's gone. And yet in the previous seasons when they've sacked managers, they've all described Chelsea as an awful club that they really don't like because they keep sacking managers. But what they do remains a successful method. Whether we like it or not, them having a turnover of managers keeps bringing in trophies and keeps bringing in a sustained level of success that very few other clubs can match. So how can we argue with what they're doing? They're not looking at league positions or winning a Champions League group. They're looking at the manager and his ability, and they've decided, whether rightly or wrongly, they've decided he hasn't got the same ability as Thomas Tuchel has got to turn this around and make Chelsea successful. And the sad thing about that is we will never know if Frank could have done that. But it is inevitable because, lads, it's Chelsea.